Okay, so hopefully everybody can see the slides. To kind of kick us off here, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are in the world today. My name is David DeSanto. I'm the Director of Product for Secure and Defend. Today we're going to focus on the Defend section and stage, but the Defend team here is on the phone or on the call here to answer your questions as we go. So before getting into, let's go back a couple slides here. There we go. Before diving into what Defend is, I wanted to first talk about red versus blue and talk about the security landscape today. When talking about security, that term gets used a lot, red versus blue, and the security group conversation did a very good job defining what red team or red team assessments are. But to kind of give a real high level overview, the goal is to do a vulnerability assessment, including penetration testing, to find weaknesses within the application. Okay. The goal is to be able to find issues and verify your security effectiveness such that you can begin to mitigate them. The other component of that is the blue team assessment, which doesn't get talked about a lot, but the goal of a blue team assessment is to verify the security policies and procedures work as you expect, such that you can find the holes again and actively address them. Another term that gets used a lot in the security industry is purple team assessments. And what this is referring to is combining that red and blue together into one active test. I want to highlight this here for you for two reasons. One, we have both components of that. I'll talk to that in a second. And two, as we talk to our customers and our users, this term is becoming more and more popular. You'll see it spoken about at conferences regularly. But if you remember from your primary school days or elementary school, depending where you are in the world, when you combine red and blue together, you get purple. So I can't claim that the security industry has been very unique in naming things, but it's a good way to remember that that red team is the offensive side and the blue team is the defensive side. But this is where GitLab is uniquely positioned. So we can enable our users for purple teaming. And you can do that. Red teaming is the secure section, which we won't talk about today. We can talk more about in upcoming group conversation. And the blue team is the defense side, where we have things such as our WAF there to defend the applications and provide logging and monitoring on what is occurring. And when you combine that together again, GitLab is very uniquely positioned, and you can see that there on the right to enable our users for the full security landscape. So let's talk about the defend section. For Defend, our goal is to be able to focus on defending applications and infrastructure, as well as helping our users identify and catalog vulnerabilities and risk. Our goal is to be able to enable our users to remediate and understand the issues that are happening within their environment. And if you want to learn more about our direction and our vision, you can go to the website. There's a lot of good content on there. We're also driven by our guiding principles. Listen first, then act is the first one. This means initially we're going to monitor and alert users on what is occurring. But the act allows them to go in and actively tell us to begin blocking malicious traffic, users, and devices. Inform is our next. And for inform, we're referring to informing other stages. And this is, again, a unique key advantage for GitLab, because we're one integrated DevOps platform such that Defend can notify throughout whichever components it needs to notify through. And then finally, emphasizing usability and convention over configuration. For Defend, right out of the box, we come with a reasonable policy for alerting on traffic. But that doesn't prevent users from going in and providing additional complex configurations themselves. Here's a list of the Defend team today. I introduced myself earlier. You've also met Sam Kerr previously on calls such as the Secure and Defend sections. I do want to also highlight we have new employees as well. In the last several weeks, we've had 3 new employees, including myself, Matt Wilson, who's Senior PM for Defend, and Wayne Haber, who is the Director of Engineering for Defend. But I do want to also highlight that we are actively hiring. We have a lot of open positions as we continue to ramp up Defend, both on the product and on the engineering side. Here's a nice snapshot of the defend stage and where we stand today. You can see we have a very aggressive plan going into next year. And then to kind of wrap up here, we had our first deliverable, which is our web application firewall in 12.3. This officially brought defend into the stages. We have a lot of really cool features coming up here over the next several releases and into next year to begin to fully expand that defend stage to be covering all the areas in which we want to focus on. And with that, we can go over to the Q&A. As of right now, there is no Q&A. Nobody's asked any questions, which I can only imagine you have lots of questions, you just haven't typed them in yet. Or maybe I'm wrong and the presentation was so good you have 0 questions, which is also fine. And we can give everybody back the next 15 or 20 minutes. So we'll give it a minute here. While we do that, Sam, Matt, Wayne, would you like to say hello to everybody on the live stream here?
Hey, so this is DT.
Sure. Oh, go ahead, DT.
Yeah, this is DT. DT in Santa Cruz, California, solution architect. Can you go back to the slide that had the table matrix of where you're going in the future with the
Sure.
The features capabilities? Yeah, exactly. And so I was curious, what is UEBA?
So that's user behavior analytics. The goal there is to be able to track user activity across whatever the service is. In the case of us, we're going to be talking about it with regards to the GitLab application and be able to identify anomalies in behavior. A good example of that would be, let's say, I'll use me. David always connects to the GitLab application from Dallas, Texas, where he lives, and he only does, pulls to basically see what the latest code is. But now David's login is seen in, I don't know, we'll say France, somewhere where he's usually not seen, and all of a sudden there's a lot of commits being done. That would allow us to alert that there's a change in the user's behavior and allow our customer to make the decision as to whether or not that needs to be blocked, whether or not that just needs to be alerted on, and any action needs to be taken.
Great, thank you. And also the last one, which is much further out, DLP.
Sure, so DLP is data loss prevention. The goal with that is to be able to identify sensitive data that's leaving the secure zone. So an example of that would be, if you look at any major data breach that's occurred over the last several years, in a lot of those cases, there was not good DLP practices there. And what was occurring, if you use an example of like Anthem, customer data was leaving the environment, and there was nothing that was actually saying that, hey, that's now a patient file that has left the data center and is in its transit to the internet. You can use us as a good example of that too. So we're storing source code for our customers. We're storing data on their behaviors per the monitoring that we have. And now all of a sudden you see that data is being transitioned from one repository to another, out of GitLab as a whole, all these different things that could be flagged to say, hey, there's data that's potentially being lost here that's sensitive, and we'll have it both as a alert as well as eventually be able to block that type of data. So like think of like credit card numbers or things like that that you wouldn't want leaving your secured environment.
Great, thank you. The vision table is fantastic for having these kind of conversations. Appreciate that.
Yep.
David, quick question for you. Do you see Defend being added to Ultimate, or do you expect that we might actually see an Ultimate Plus? I just want to get a feel for this, because when we begin talking to our customers, I don't want to mistake that we're going to be adding something into an existing product if that's not the case. Or do you even have any sort of line of sight of that?
Sure. So today the plan is for all of it to go into Ultimate. I will tell you that based off your comment, yeah, there is conversations about whether or not at some point there needs to be a higher tiered level based off what we're offering. But our intent is to continue our open source and leading with community first. And so we'll also be pulling parts of Defend down into Premium, Starter, or Core. That way, we're helping everybody lead with a security first mentality. Does that answer your
Thank you.
question, Larry?
It did.
Okay.
And we have to be careful.
Right. And so like, I can tell you I've been here 3 weeks, or this is the end of my 4th week. I will say I stepped directly onto that topic inadvertently my 1st week, so I understand the sensitivity of it. But there's 2 components to that we really need to think about. And this is kind of how I've recentered it for myself. The first is that we do have that core principle that we want to support the community. And so we will do that, especially with open source solutions that we're using to build out our offering. But we also understand that there's additional value beyond what would just be an open source plugin. And that's where, you know, Sam and Matt and myself are working very hard to be able to show that, hey, you can have amazing historical trend data, you can have dashboards, you can have control throughout your entire environment. That's more than what somebody could just do if they grabbed an open source solution. We're also looking at how we build out our own offerings that are, you know, commercial directly from us and not out as an open source solution. I think that's where we provide that separation and can really show that, hey, we're here to lead with security first. Here's some things that are in core, but long term, you know, or hey, if you need all this additional functionality, we actually have it in a paid tier. And so we're doing that right now with Secure. We're reviewing how to bring SAST down to core, as well as dependency scanning and license compliance. But that doesn't take away from the value that we're providing in Premium and Ultimate.
Also, for what it's worth, right now, WAF is in core, not Ultimate.
Correct. Yeah, today WAF is only in core. Okay, looks like we have a couple of more questions here. Let's see. So, Ben, do you want to vocalize your question?
Yep. So what features or categories are customers requesting most in this space, the defense space?
Sure. So what I'll say is, again, I've not been here more than maybe like 4 weeks. I guess I'm a veteran based off how quickly we're hiring now. What I've seen is the threat detection, vulnerability management, and WAF. I know, Sam, you've been here obviously a lot longer than I have. Is there anything specifically that you've seen outside of that?
Yeah, so those are definitely common ones I've seen asked for. I've also seen some requests around containers and cluster security. But one thing I do want to point out, since Defend is a brand new stage for GitLab, you know, this is where we're really relying on all of you as well to, as you're interacting with customers, users, prospects, we need that feedback. Please share with us so that we know that we're going in the right direction, we're focusing on the right things. Those are the things we've heard so far.
Okay.
I'll
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, David, I can chime in there too.
Sure.
Policy automation. So people understand that, you know, with DevOps, things move a lot faster. So you have to automate the policies because you can't manually intervene in that sort of environment. So that's something that we see a lot. So that's not really a capability in terms of like, you know, specific stovepipe, but it's something more across Defend.
Okay. William, do you want to vocalize your question?
Yeah, David, great to have you and seeing the Secure and Defend team grow up. One thing I'll share is if you're not sharing the screen, can you stop the screen share and then we can see you talking, because we like that, or at least for folks on YouTube.
Sure. I only had it still open because I was figuring there might be another question on the slides, but you can now see me in all of my amazing beardness.
Yeah, we love the beard. It's great. And other folks too. Yeah, my question is just in this last kind of period, and for other folks of your team as well, what was like an engineering challenge, or as you're building out these features, what was a challenge you encountered and how did you address that challenge?
Sure. So again, I'll defer that to Sam, who's been here the longest. I know Tom's is on the call too, so I'm sure some of them have some more stories to share.
Yeah, so on the WAF side of things, I think probably was a great exercise in really getting to minimal, you know, and sticking to those minimally viable changes. From a requirements side on product, Lucas, Thomas, I'm sure you have a more engineering focused answer though you could share.
I think probably the biggest one is that we've recently trying to apply really kind of a GitLab model to something like mod security. Mod security is not really, it's not really set up for something like a multi-tenant environment, or not so much multi-tenancy, but something like a group cluster with many projects. And so it's a bit of a configuration over convention approach. And so ensuring that that works with our product and fits a multi-project environment has been really interesting. Specifically, we're trying to figure out what ways to minimize configuration on that while still making it useful to users without you having to manually log into some cluster pod and change some text.
And how did this is one you're currently working through, or was there some things you've already done there to make it convention based?
It's currently it's currently quite convention based. The complexity comes with the next step where we enable things like blocking mode. In the case of something like mod security, there's things like a configuration threshold. So if an anomaly score goes above a certain point, it blocks requests. And so the question really becomes, are there same defaults for something like anomaly detection over every app on GitLab? Or is that something that we really need to expose to users to determine whether your CRUD app has a higher anomaly score on average than someone's payment processing app? So that's really the challenge. And that's very much like a product challenge as well as an engineering one.
So William, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that is a super interesting challenge in terms of how to set those defaults in terms of like a anomaly thresholds. I'll be super interested to hear how we progress in that realm. And I think that John was asking about tiers. I don't know, John, if you got all your questions answered or if we're off to Mech.
Actually, no, Larry did steal my question, which is fine. But so I came up with both a comment and a question. It would be nice to have a smattering of all these features in the tiers. In your explanation of UEBA, that sounds like advanced audit logging, which I think would be really cool because in premium. But my question might be also, are all these features going to be at the instance level, or will they be at the group or project levels, maybe for folks who are on .com?
Sure, Sam, do you want to talk about the plans you've had so far?
Sure. Yeah, to speak to the instance versus group versus project, I don't think there's going to be a one-size-fits-all answer. I think that it's going to depend on which category we talk about specifically and as we grow them out. Capabilities like WAF, I think, are going to make more sense to do at project level or possibly group level, since there we're going to be talking about clusters and containers, which are generally going to be specific to an individual application. But if we're talking about maybe more broad features as we look at things like UEBA or DLP, those might make more sense to look at an instance level where you're talking about an organization as a whole. So I think each of the categories is going to have a different answer depending on, what really is the problem we're trying to solve with that category, what's the value we're trying to deliver.
Are we considering customers on .com who only have access to those like group level features and not instance level?
Yes. So .com is definitely one of the primary use cases we want to make sure is well supported, well featured. .com customers today can use WAF, and our plan is to offer all of this on .com as well as on-prem.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, so Mech, do you want to realize your question?
Yeah, sure, thanks. So on slide 3 and 5, I see the mention of red teams and blue teams. So I just want to clarify, what is the overlap or collaboration here? Is it the features for the red team? How are we working? And with that, I'll give it back to you.
Sure. So I think this is actually a really great question. Whenever we talk about secure and defend, the question comes up, are we working with our own internal security team? And we are working with them. So I know Sam has met with them about how they could begin to use some of the secure and defend categories as part of their regular testing of us as a company, as well as our platform. We're also working with them to dog food the features for us as well, so we can get better feedback from our security experts at the company. But I want to make it clear that we're not in any way proposing that Secure Defend replaces the security team. What we're looking to do with Secure and Defend is to enable both them and our users to be more secure, as well as have better visibility into their security threat landscape? So I think it's a great question because since I've started in the 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks here, that's come up a lot. I just want to make sure that's clear to everybody that that's kind of how the relationship works. It's very collaborative.
Okay,
What I want to add to that hi, this is Wayne. Is dog fooding our own features as a company definitely really important, not just for secure and defend, but everywhere. But I definitely want to see us using it ourselves whenever we can. So we're getting great feedback from our own teams, and we're using it ourselves to protect ourselves.
Great. So just to be clear, the red team features are in secure, and the features for the blue team are in defend. Correct? When we map it that way.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. So the way I have recommended in the past, people kind of remember that, is the red is the offensive side, so it's clearly sending bad stuff, and then the blue is the defensive side, so they're protecting stuff. So it's just really about the direction of what you're doing, whether you're attacking it or you're defending it. Okay, that brings us to the end of the questions. We've got a couple minutes left if there's any final questions. If not, you guys can everyone on the call can get a couple minutes back. Okay. On that note, thank you everybody for joining. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us in one of our Slack channels. You can also reach out to us directly if there's anything specifically on the question we answered. But again, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.